Hello and welcome to Peaky Boardgamer. My name is Victor Rakos and today, my friends, we're gonna travel to China because I have here another one of Uwe Rosenberg's games at the Gates of Loyang. That's again one of his games in which players are farmers sowing their fields with vegetables and then selling them to various customers. That's a game for 1 to 4 players, takes about 2 hours to finish, takes a bit too long with 4 players in my opinion, but demonstrates very interesting mechanics. Now before starting with the rules, I want to remind you that there is an active giveaway contest that you can click here if you want to find out more details of how you can win one of 3 different board games. Now let's move to the table and see how At the Gates of Loyang is played. In the game, players are farmers. Their main source of income is to sell vegetables to casual and regular customers. Each player has a personal supplier shop where they can buy limited quantities of vegetables at very high prices. So players mostly need to plant their own fields and use their harvested goods to satisfy their customers. To their side, players also have market stalls where they can exchange their goods and also helper cards that offer various positive effects. Players need the money they collect to buy advancements in the scoring track on their boards. At the end of the 9th round, the player who has advanced more in this scoring track will win the game at the Gates of Loyang. At first, create supplies with the vegetable tokens, the money coins and the satisfaction tokens. Then shuffle all the action cards, the ones with the brown backside, and place them facing downwards. Finally, create a supply with the loan cards. Each player takes a personal game board and places it in front of their play area and also a scoring marker placed on space 1 of the personal scoring track. The top part of the board illustrates the player's personal shop. The player will be able to buy and sell vegetables from this shop throughout the game. Populate the shop by placing the depicted vegetables from the supply, leaving empty the 2 bottom right spaces with a white background. Here we have wheat, pumpkins, turnips, cabbages, beans and leeks. Each player takes 1 storage card using the side depicting 1 here on top and place it here. Also, each player takes a turn summary card and places it here. From the private field deck, the cards with a green backside, find and separate the cards that depict this little house in the top left corner. These are home cards and each player gets 1 of them, which is placed here. The rest of the private field cards are separated to 4 types, cards depicting 3 fields, 4 fields, 5 fields and 6 fields. Each player takes 8 of these cards in the following way. Create a set with 4 cards with 1 card from each different type, then a second set equal like the first, shuffle each set separately and place 1 set on top of the other. This set of cards is the player's 8 private fields and is placed here. After all players receive their private fields, remaining private field cards are placed back in the box. Finally, each player starts the game with 10 coins, these are 5s and these are 1s. Using any random way, select a player to be the first player who takes this token. The second smaller token is the second player's marker, but at the start of the game it stays in the middle of the table. Now starting with the first player and continuing clockwise, each player will buy a vegetable from the shop and plant it in the home field. All private field cards depict in the top right corner the types of vegetables that can be planted. For the home field, it's either a wheat, a pumpkin or a turnip. The cost to buy a vegetable from the shop is depicted by the number with a darker background, so here it's either 3, 4 or 5 coins to buy a turnip. So for example, I will pay 3 coins to buy a wheat and plant it on my home field. Then fill all the field spaces with the selected vegetable by taking them from the general supply. Now it's the next player's turn to plant their home field. Important, there is a rule that no more than 2 players can select the same vegetable type. The game is now ready to start. The game is played over 9 rounds and each round is split to 3 phases. In the harvest phase, all players add a new private field and then harvest 1 vegetable from all of their planted fields. In the card phase, all players are dealt 4 action cards. Through a sophisticated method, All players choose 2 of these action cards to place in their personal boards. Finally, in the action phase, all players take a turn during which they perform various actions. With these actions, players interact with their goods, their customers, and also with other players. Now let's see each one of these phases in greater detail. In the harvest phase, all players act simultaneously, performing the following steps. First, all players gain a new private field card by flipping the top card from their stack. Then players harvest 1 vegetable from all of their planted fields. Vegetables are moved to the player's storage card. If during harvest you take the last vegetable from a planted field, then the field is discarded. If the discarded field card is a private field, a green card, then it's removed from the game. If, however, the field has a brown back, then it is placed with the rest discarded action cards. Moving to the card phase, the first step you're gonna do is to reshuffle all discarded action cards with the rest of the cards, forming a new deck, and then deal 4 cards to each one of the players. After players examine their cards, they start a distribution round, which I will now explain. The distribution round is a clockwise process with players taking turns one after the other, during which all players will end up playing 2 action cards. One of the action cards will come from their hand of cards and the other from a virtual area in the center called the courtyard. The courtyard is initially empty, however it will be opened by the player with the first player token, who will simply lose the first turn to add 1 card from their hand of cards face up in the middle of the courtyard. The process now continues clockwisely, with players now having 2 options: to either add another card in the courtyard or select 1 card from their hand and 1 card from the courtyard and drop out. Then, if the dropped out player has any remaining cards in their hand, these are all added in the courtyard. The selected cards are gonna be played to the player's board. I will explain how these are played in a second. As the process continues, if the player on their turn has only 1 card remaining on their hand, then they have to select it, as well as 1 card from the courtyard, and drop out. And when there is only 1 player remaining, they also need to drop out by selecting 1 card from their hand and also 1 card from the courtyard. All remaining cards in the courtyard are gonna be discarded in a discard pile for action cards. At the end of the distribution round, the player who dropped out last takes the first player token, and the player who dropped out before that player takes the smaller second player token. There is a special rule in a 2 players game. Before a player makes a selection according to the options we just explained, a player may flip the top card from the action deck and add it to the courtyard. So, the first player who starts the process and normally has to add 1 card from their hand into the courtyard, now they may add a card from the card deck to the courtyard before doing so. And now that the courtyard has already opened with the card, the first player has also the option to drop out from the first turn by selecting this card and any card from their hand and drop out. Now let's see how the selected cards are played. We have 5 different types of cards. We have common fields, market stalls, regular customers, casual customers, and helpers. If a player selected a common field, they must now pay a cost of 2 coins, as it's depicted in the top left corner of the card. The player pays the cost of the general supply and adds the card next to their other fields. Whenever players need to pay cash, like in this case here, they must find the cash, and there are 3 different sources. One is to use a power of a helper that gives instant money to the player. The second is to sell goods to the shop. A player may also take a loan card from the supply. When taking a loan card, the player gains immediately 5 coins from the bank. Loans are never repaid, however they have a negative effect at the end of the game. We'll see that when the time comes. Next we have market stalls. These are played in this area of the board. Market stalls depict 3 different vegetables. These must be taken from the general supply and are placed as I show you here. Next, we have regular customers. These are placed in this area of the board. After placement, you also take a satisfaction marker and you place it with the blue side facing upwards in the bottom card row. This indicates that the customer is expecting the depicted goods in the upcoming action phase. Next, we have common customers. These are played in this area of the board. Again, here we see 3 depicted vegetables that the customer is demanding. However, these customers are more patient and players can satisfy their demands whenever they see fit. Finally, we have helper cards which are played in this area of the board. They offer various effects that I cannot of course explain, but they're all explained in the 2 last pages of the rulebook. Last but not least, there is no limit in the quantity of cards that can be played in any of the categories. In the actions phase, all players will take 1 turn and perform actions that I will now explain. Players may perform any number of different actions and also the same action multiple times. The first player to take a turn is the player with the first player token, followed by the player with the second player's token. If this is a 3 players game, then the player not having a token will go last. The only reason why players do not execute the action phase simultaneously is because of some of the cards that allow for player interaction. To decrease downtime significantly, Uwe Rosenberg has made some alterations that apply only in a 4 players game, which I will now explain. The player with the first player token selects 1 player not having a token, and they become partners for the upcoming action phase. So the player with the second player token becomes partners with the last player. Now the action phase starts with the 2 players that have tokens acting simultaneously, and all effects that might arise that require interaction with an opponent, they will be interacting with their partner only. After these players complete their action turns, the players not having tokens will act simultaneously as well, again interacting with their partners only whenever they have to. Let us now explain all of the different actions. All of them are also displayed in the player's aid card. Let's start with the actions of buying and selling goods from the personal shop. A player may buy any vegetable that exists on the personal shop by paying the cost that is depicted in the darker background. So I could pay 4 coins and take this pumpkin, placing it to my storage card. Selling goods to the shop works similarly. If there is an empty space, it means you can sell one of your goods and then gain the coins depicted in the number in the white background. So selling the wheat would grant me 1 coin. The selling action only can also be played outside the action phase, whenever the player needs to gain cash to pay for something. The next action is sow vegetables. If you have an available vegetable and an empty field, you can use the vegetable as a seed and then fill all the spaces with vegetables from the supply. Do not forget that the seed you sow must be acceptable by the card. The next action is to exchange vegetables with a market stall. Take a look on the card. Beneath each one of the vegetables, we see a number of bowls. The number of bowls indicates the number of vegetables we must pay in order to exchange it with the vegetable on the card. So to gain the turnip or the cabbage, I have to spend only 1 vegetable. But to get the bean, I would have to spend 2 vegetables. The type of vegetable spent has no meaning, only quantity matters. The spent vegetables move back to the general supply and the gained vegetable goes to the player's storage card. Last but not least, a player can also exchange 1 vegetable to gain a vegetable of the same type, and there is meaning in doing so, but I will not analyze it further. After the last vegetable on the stall is removed, the card is also placed in the discard pile of action cards. The next action is to deliver goods to a regular customer. If the player has in their storage the desired goods by the customer, they may spend them by placing them on top of their card and then gain the coins depicted next to the row. In this case, it's 4 coins. You may only send goods to a regular customer once per each action phase. To indicate this, after doing so, you move the satisfaction marker back on this space. At the start of every action phase, you will be moving the satisfaction marker to the next row. This notifies the player that they have not yet satisfied the customer for the current action phase. After all rows of the cards are satisfied, the card is removed and placed in the action card discard pile. The next action is to send goods to a casual customer. Casual customers also demand for the depicted goods. If the player has them available, they can send them to the customer and then gain an amount of coins which depends on timing. In the bottom right corner of the card we see 7 coins and also a ±2 modifier. If at the time we send the goods to the customer we have an equal number of common customers and regular customers, which is the case here, then we disregard the modifier and we gain the depicted number of coins, here 7 coins. If, however, we had more common customers than regular customers, then we apply the -2 coins, so in that case I would only gain 5 coins. Finally, if we had more regular customers than casual customers, then we apply the +2 modifier, and in this case I would gain 9 coins. Then vegetables go back to the supply, the card goes to the discards, and that's the end of the action. As an action, you can also use the effects on one or more of your helper cards. After the effect is used, the card is discarded. You may also discard one of your cards without applying the effect at all. The effects are also written on these cards. These are self-explanatory, I will not analyze further. The last action is to buy a 2-pack of action cards from the general supply. The cost of buying this 2-card pack depends on the number of stalls and helpers in your play area. At the moment I have 2 helpers and 1 stall. The maximum of these 2 numbers is the cost to buy the 2-pack, so in my case it would be 2 coins that need to be paid in order to gain this 2-pack. In this example I would only have to pay 1 coin, and if I had no cards at all, the cost would be 0. Very important, players may only perform this action once during each action phase. So after paying the cost, the player flips the top 2 cards from the action card deck. Then the player must select if they're gonna use 0, 1 or both of these cards. So the player could just discard both of them without, of course, taking back the money they paid. If the player draws and decides to keep a common field, the cost of 2 coins must be paid now. If the player keeps 1 card, then the card is placed in the dedicated space and the other one is discarded. But if the player wants to keep both of the cards, they need to order them like this or like that, and then place both of them in the dedicated area of the card which is on top. Now, when this casual customer receives the demanded goods and is removed, then the field is immediately placed in the dedicated area. If the 2 cards, however, were used like this, then after this field was planted, emptied and discarded, the customer would immediately move here. When the player has completed their action phase, they must do the following. First, they must check if they have any regular customer that has not received the demanded goods. If the satisfaction marker is still on the blue side, then it is turned to the other side and is placed here with no other penalty. Now this is a dissatisfied customer. When dissatisfied customers do not receive their demanded goods, then the player must immediately pay 2 coins to the bank. Next, the player keeps a number of vegetables up to the number indicated on the storage card, here 1 only. If a player has more vegetables, they need to discard the excess ones. The player, however, can also pay the indicated cost of 2 coins and flip the storage card to the other side. This side increases the limit to 4 vegetables. A player can never keep more than 4 vegetables at the end of their action phase. Finally, the player can spend coins to advance the scoring marker on the path. The first advancement on each round costs only 1 coin, but the player can advance more spaces by paying a cost in coins equal to the number depicted on the space. So if the player spends 3 more coins, they could advance once again, and by paying another 4 coins they can move again, and so on and so forth. Players may move unlimited number of times within a round, provided they have enough cash. After the 9th round, the game comes to an end. When this happens, all players that have loan cards move back their scoring marker one space for each loan they had. Then the player who has reached higher in this track wins the game. If there is a tie, then the player with the most cash in hand wins the tie. If the tie still exists, the tied players add all the vegetables on their fields and also the ones on their storage card, and the player who has the most wins the game. Other than that, all tied players share their victory. And that was the video for At the Gates of Loyang, another great game designed by Uwe Rosenberg. If you like our videos and want to see more, please subscribe to my channel, and until next time, have fun and play more board games.